Marcus Williams was a man who did not talk much, but when he did, people listened. He was 34 years old, tall, with broad shoulders and steady hands that had changed more diapers and braided more hair than most men his age would ever admit to. He lived in a mid-sized city in Georgia with his 2 children, Destiny, who was 8, and little Caleb, who had just turned 5. Their mother had left 3 years ago. No dramatic scene, no big argument. She just stopped coming home one day, and then one day turned into forever. Marcus did not chase her. He picked up the pieces, called his mother for advice every Sunday, and learned how to do everything on his own. He worked at a logistics company from Monday to Friday, managing shipments and schedules. It was not glamorous work, but it paid the bills and gave him weekends. Saturdays were sacred in the Williams house. That was the day Marcus took the kids out, to the park, to the library, or sometimes to Greenfield Mall, which sat about 20 minutes from their apartment. The mall had a food court the kids loved, a small indoor play area, and a shoe store where Destiny could spend 45 minutes looking at sneakers she would never ask her father to buy, because she already knew money was something they were careful with. On a Saturday in early November, Marcus loaded both kids into his second-hand SUV and drove to Greenfield Mall. The weather had turned cold that week, and Caleb had been asking about the toy store near the east entrance for 2 weekends straight. Marcus had promised. A promise to Caleb was not something you broke unless you wanted to hear about it for the next 3 months. They arrived just before noon. The mall was busy, but not overwhelming. Holiday decorations had already gone up, silver and gold tinsel along the railings. A large Christmas tree near the center fountain that Caleb immediately ran toward and had to be pulled back from before he could stick his hand into the water. Marcus held his son's hand firmly, let Destiny walk beside him like the little adult she sometimes pretended to be, and made his way through the crowd. They were heading toward the east wing when Marcus noticed her. She was an older woman, maybe 70 or a little past it, with silver hair tucked under a cream-colored hat and a long wool coat that had seen better days but was clearly well cared for. She was standing near a bench outside a clothing store, and she was holding a large shopping bag in one hand and her purse tightly against her chest with the other. She looked confused. Not lost exactly, but unsure. Her eyes moved slowly around the mall like she was trying to find something familiar to hold on to. Marcus would have kept walking. He was not the kind of man who inserted himself into strangers' lives without reason. But then he saw the mall security guard. The guard was a young man, maybe 22, with a uniform that looked slightly too big for him and an expression that sat somewhere between bored and aggressive. He had stopped in front of the older woman and was saying something to her. Marcus was too far away to hear the words, but he could read the body language clearly. The guard was standing too close. His chin was lifted. The older woman had stepped back slightly, which meant she had already felt uncomfortable enough to create distance between them. Marcus slowed his pace. "Hold on a second," he told Destiny quietly. She looked up at him, reading his face the way kids read their parents when they know something is about to happen. As he got closer, the words became clear. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with me to the security office," the guard was saying. His voice was not loud, but it had an edge to it, the kind of edge that comes from a person who has been given a small amount of authority and has decided that makes them important. "We've had a report, and I need to ask you some questions." The older woman's voice was thin but dignified. "I haven't done anything. I just bought a blouse from that store right there." She gestured toward the clothing shop behind her. "Ma'am, that's what we need to verify. I have my receipt. I understand that. But I still need you to come with me." Something in Marcus shifted. He had seen this before, not always in malls, not always with security guards, but the shape of it was familiar. An older person, clearly harmless, being pushed around by someone who had decided that a uniform gave them the right to treat people like suspects. He stepped forward. "Excuse me." His voice was calm. It was the voice he used when he needed people to pay attention without feeling threatened. "Is everything okay here?" The guard turned and looked at Marcus with the kind of look that was meant to communicate that his presence was not welcome. "Sir, this doesn't concern you." "She's upset," Marcus said simply. "And she's an older woman standing alone. So I'm just checking." The older woman looked at Marcus with something that was almost relief, like she had been holding her breath, and someone had finally told her it was okay to let it go. "He wants me to go to some office," she said. "I told him I have my receipt." Marcus turned to the guard. "Has she done something wrong?" "Sir, I told you, this doesn't concern." I'm asking a simple question, Marcus said. His tone had not changed. He was not being aggressive. He was being clear. Has this woman done something wrong? Has she been accused of stealing? Because if she has her receipt, I'm not sure what the problem is. The guard's jaw tightened. We received a report. What kind of report? The guard did not answer immediately, which was itself an answer. Marcus looked at the woman. Do you want to go with him? No, she said quietly. I don't. Then you don't have to. He turned back to the guard. Unless you're detaining her for something specific, she's not required to go anywhere with you. By now, a few people nearby had noticed the exchange. A couple had stopped walking. A woman with a stroller had paused near the bench. The guard looked around, suddenly aware of the small audience, and his confidence flickered. I'm going to call my supervisor, the guard said, pulling out his radio. That's a good idea, Marcus replied. He shifted Caleb to his other hand and stood straight, not aggressive, not backing down either. Just present. The older woman looked at him. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me yet, Marcus said gently, with the hint of a smile. Let's see what the supervisor says. They waited. Destiny stood beside her father, watching everything with wide, quiet eyes. Caleb, who was 5 and therefore constitutionally incapable of standing still for more than 90 seconds, had started examining the decorations on a nearby pillar and was currently trying to figure out how the lights blinked. The guard spoke into his radio in a low voice, keeping his back half turned to Marcus. The couple who had stopped were still watching. The woman with the stroller had not moved. Marcus looked at the older woman. What's your name? Dorothy, she said. Dorothy Hale. Marcus Williams. He nodded toward his kids. That's Destiny, and the one trying to steal the Christmas lights is Caleb. Dorothy smiled for the first time since he had noticed her. It was a real smile, the kind that reaches the eyes. They're beautiful children. There's something, Marcus said, which made Dorothy's smile widen. A minute passed. Then another. The guard was still on his radio. The audience around them had grown slightly. Now there were perhaps 8 or 9 people who had slowed or stopped, sensing that something worth watching was unfolding near the bench by the clothing store in the east wing of Greenfield Mall on a cold Saturday in November. Then the manager appeared, a woman in a blazer, walking quickly from the direction of the mall offices, with an expression on her face that Marcus could not quite read yet. He stood still and waited. Because in his experience, the most important moments were always the ones that came after you decided to stay. The manager's name tag said Karen Briggs, Mall Operations. She was a woman in her mid-40s, with short brown hair pulled back neatly and the kind of composed expression that people develop after years of dealing with complaints, difficult customers, and situations that required them to appear calm even when they were not. She walked toward the small group near the bench with her hands clasped in front of her and her eyes moving quickly between the guard, Dorothy, and Marcus. What's going on here? She asked. Her voice was professional. Neutral. The guard started talking first. His version was quick and rehearsed. A report had come in. He was following procedure. The woman had refused to cooperate, and then this man had inserted himself into a security matter. He spoke fast, like someone who wanted to control the story before anyone else could offer a different one. Karen Briggs listened. She nodded in the places people nod when they are gathering information without committing to anything. Then she turned to Dorothy. Ma'am, can you tell me what happened? Dorothy was steady. She had recovered some of her composure in the minutes she had spent standing beside Marcus, and her voice was clear when she spoke. She had entered the mall at approximately 11:15. She had walked to the clothing store, she pointed to it, and she had purchased a blouse. She had paid with her debit card. She had the receipt in her bag. She had come out of the store and was resting on the bench because her knees had been bothering her lately, and the next thing she knew, the guard was standing in front of her telling her she needed to go to the security office. No one told me why, Dorothy said. He just said there had been a report. I showed him I had a bag from the store, and I told him I had a receipt, and he still wanted me to come with him. Karen Briggs looked at the guard. Did she show you her receipt? There was a pause that lasted just a beat too long. She mentioned having one. Did you ask to see it? Another pause. I was following the procedure for the report that came in. What was the report? The guard shifted his weight. Someone flagged a person matching her description near the accessories section. Marcus, who had been standing quietly through all of this, spoke up. Matching her description how? The guard looked at him with an expression that was trying to be dismissive and was not quite managing it. Sir, I wasn't speaking to you. You're standing in a public space explaining why you stopped a 70-year-old woman who had a receipt for her purchase, Marcus said. His voice was still even, still calm. So I'm asking a reasonable question. What was the description? Because the only thing I can see is that she's an older black woman who was resting on a bench after buying something from that store. The silence that followed was not comfortable. Karen Briggs was looking at the guard now with a different kind of attention, the kind that was starting to calculate consequences. I followed the report, the guard said again, but his voice had lost some of its earlier certainty. What exactly was reported? Karen Briggs asked him directly. He could not answer clearly. He talked around it. Someone had flagged suspicious behavior. He had responded. He was doing his job. But the specifics did not come. There was no clear description. There was no documented incident from the accessories section. There was a report, supposedly, but the details of that report were vague in a way that only became more obvious the more he was asked to explain it. Dorothy reached into her shopping bag and pulled out the receipt. She held it out to Karen Briggs without saying anything. The receipt was there, date, time, item description, amount, last 4 digits of the card used. Clean and complete. Karen Briggs looked at it. She did not look at it for long, because there was nothing complicated about what she was reading. She handed it back to Dorothy. The small crowd that had gathered was still watching. A teenager nearby had his phone out, not obviously recording, but the possibility was there and visible to everyone. Marcus noticed Karen Briggs noticed the phone. He saw something shift behind her professional composure. A calculation, a recalibration. Mrs. Hale, Karen Briggs said, her voice softening in a way that was slightly practiced but not entirely insincere. I want to apologize for the inconvenience. Your receipt is perfectly in order. You're welcome to continue shopping. Dorothy looked at her. I'd like to know why I was stopped. We do occasionally receive reports from shoppers or staff. Based on what? Dorothy asked. Her voice was quiet, but it had a firmness to it now. I wasn't doing anything. I came out of that store with my bag, and I sat down on that bench because my knees hurt. Who reported me, and what did they say? Karen Briggs opened her mouth and then closed it. The answer she was forming was the kind of answer that says something while meaning nothing. We take all reports seriously. We follow our procedures. We value every customer. Marcus had heard versions of that answer before. He had received versions of it himself. She's asking a direct question, Marcus said. Not loudly, just clearly. A woman was stopped for no reason that's been explained. She has her receipt. She did nothing wrong. So who reported her? And what exactly did they say she did? Karen Briggs looked at Marcus with an expression that was trying to figure out what category to put him in. He was not yelling. He was not waving his arms. He was standing with his 2 children, speaking in full sentences, asking questions that had obvious and simple answers, or should have. I understand your concern, she said to him, pivoting to the language of de-escalation. I'm not concerned, Marcus said. I'm curious. There's a difference. He looked at her steadily. This woman did nothing wrong. Someone flagged her, with no clear description of any actual behavior, and your guard tried to walk her to a back office without even looking at her receipt. I'd like to understand how that happens. The guard was looking at the floor now in the particular way that people look at the floor when they know the conversation has turned against them and their best option is to become invisible. Dorothy was watching Marcus. She had the expression of a woman who had lived long enough to see this particular shape of thing many times, but had not often had someone stand next to her while it was happening. Caleb tugged at his father's sleeve. Dad, can we still go to the toy store? Marcus looked down at his son and felt the pull of the ordinary. The simple plan of the day, the promise he had made, the sneakers Destiny wanted to look at, the lunch they were going to get in the food court, the normal Saturday that had taken a detour. In a minute, buddy, he said. Karen Briggs had pulled out her own small notepad. I'm going to document this interaction, she said. Mrs. Hale, if you'd like to file a formal complaint, I would, Dorothy said immediately. You can come to the mall office and I'll help you with that. She can also do that right here, Marcus said. Or she can give her name and contact information and receive the form by email. She doesn't need to go anywhere she's not comfortable going. Karen Briggs looked at him again. There was something in her eyes now that was harder to read. Not quite annoyance, not quite respect. Something in between, working itself out. That's also an option, she said carefully. Dorothy gave her name and phone number. Karen Briggs wrote them down. The guard was asked, in a voice that left little room for interpretation, to return to his regular route. He left without saying anything to Dorothy or to Marcus. As the small crowd began to drift apart, now that the tension had released and there was nothing left to watch, Dorothy turned to Marcus. She was a small woman, and she had to tilt her head back a little to look him in the eye. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "I know," Marcus said. Most people walked right past. He did not have an answer for that, because it was true and they both knew it, and there was nothing useful to add to it. "Are you from here?" she asked. "Live about 20 minutes away," he said. "Bring the kids here most Saturdays." Dorothy nodded slowly. She looked at Destiny and Caleb. Caleb had given up on the Christmas lights and was now inspecting a decorative reindeer near the entrance to a shoe store. Destiny was standing with her arms folded in a posture that was almost identical to her father's. "You're raising them right," Dorothy said. Marcus almost said something modest, something deflecting, the way people do when someone says something kind and they are not sure what to do with it. But he stopped himself. He just nodded. "Thank you, Mrs. Hale." She squeezed his arm once, lightly, and then began gathering her things. Marcus watched her for a moment, and then he turned to his kids. But the day was not finished. And the silence from the mall managers, the real silence, the one that would come later, had not yet arrived. Marcus took the kids to the toy store, as promised. Caleb found a small dinosaur set he had apparently been thinking about for 2 weeks, and Marcus bought it because $5.67 was a reasonable price for the joy on his son's face. Destiny found a book on a discount rack near the front. She was always finding books, and added it to the small collection she kept on the shelf above her bed. They ate lunch in the food court, chicken tenders for the kids, a sandwich for Marcus, and one shared order of fries that Caleb ate most of without anyone officially deciding that was what was going to happen. The afternoon was normal after that. Good, even. But Marcus did not stop thinking about Dorothy Hale. He thought about her on the drive home, while Caleb made his dinosaurs fight each other in the back seat and Destiny read her new book with her knees pulled to her chest. He thought about the way the guard had spoken to her, not loudly, not with slurs, not in any way that would have made a news headline immediately. Just that particular tone, that particular posture, that assumption underneath it all that she needed to be checked, verified, questioned, simply because she existed in that space and someone had decided that was worth reporting. He thought about the manager's face when she realized people were watching. He thought about how quickly the apology had come, not because it was felt, but because the audience made it necessary. When he got home and the kids were settled, he did something he rarely did. He sat down and wrote out what had happened. Not in an angry way, just clearly. He described Dorothy, the guard, the interaction, the crowd, the manager, the questions that had not been answered. He read it back to himself twice to make sure it was accurate and fair. Then he posted it on his personal social media page, which had maybe 300 followers, mostly family, co-workers, and a few people he had gone to school with. He tagged Greenfield Mall's official account and wrote simply at the end, "This woman did nothing wrong. She had her receipt. She was stopped anyway. I'd like to know why." He did not expect much. He went to bed at 10:30, checked on both kids, and fell asleep. By morning, his phone was full. The post had been shared. Not by hundreds of thousands of people, not in the way things sometimes explode across the internet overnight, but steadily and meaningfully, by people in the city, by local community groups, by a few people with larger followings who had added their own words to it. Someone had created a brief video summary of the incident using Marcus's text and posted it separately. A local news blogger had picked up the story and written a short piece. By Sunday afternoon, the Greenfield Mall account had received dozens of comments on their most recent posts, all referencing what had happened to Dorothy Hale on Saturday. Greenfield Mall went silent. No response to Marcus's tag. No statement on their page. No acknowledgement of any kind from the official account. The comments kept coming and the silence kept expanding, and the silence was its own kind of answer. Marcus received a call on Sunday evening from a number he did not recognize. He almost did not pick up, but something made him answer. It was Dorothy. She had found his name through a friend who had seen the post online. Her voice was steadier than it had been in the mall. She told him she had seen what he wrote. She told him she had been sitting with her daughter that afternoon reading it together. "My daughter cried," Dorothy said. Not because it was sad exactly, because someone told the truth about what happened. Marcus did not know what to say to that, so he said the simplest thing. It needed to be said. "I've had things like this happen before," Dorothy told him. Not always in malls. In stores. In offices. On buses. You learn to carry it quietly because making noise costs something, and you don't always have the energy to pay that price. Marcus understood what she meant. He had learned versions of that same math over the years, calculating when to speak, when silence was survival, when the cost of standing up exceeded what you could afford at that particular moment in your particular life. The difference this time, Dorothy said, was that someone else was willing to pay. They talked for a while. He found out she was a retired schoolteacher. 41 years in classrooms, mostly middle school. She had a daughter in the city and a son who lived in another state. Her husband had passed 4 years ago. She walked to the mall most Saturdays when the weather permitted because it gave her something to do and kept her knees from stiffening up, and she liked the clothing store where she had bought the blouse because the woman at the register always said good morning and meant it. Marcus told her a little about himself. The kids. The job. The Saturdays that had become their ritual. He did not say much about their mother, and Dorothy did not ask. Before she hung up, she said, "Those children are lucky." "I'm the lucky one," Marcus said, and he meant it. On Monday morning, with the online conversation still building and the mall still silent, a local television news station called. A reporter had seen the post, read the blog piece, and wanted to speak with Marcus. He thought about it for 20 minutes before agreeing. He was careful in the interview. He was not trying to destroy anyone. He was not calling for anyone to be fired. He said what had happened plainly and repeated the question he had asked in the mall and had never received a real answer to. What was the report, and what did it say Dorothy had done? The segment aired Monday evening. It was 3 minutes long. It showed a photo of Marcus and a separate photo of Dorothy that she had agreed to provide. The reporter described the incident accurately and ended with the note that Greenfield Mall had not responded to requests for comment. That silence was now on television. By Tuesday, the mall issued a statement. It was a careful statement, the kind that has been reviewed by multiple people whose job is to reduce legal exposure while appearing to acknowledge something. It said the mall took all customer experiences seriously. It said every shopper deserved to be treated with dignity and respect. It said they were reviewing the incident in question and would be re-examining their security procedures. It did not say Dorothy had been treated unfairly. It did not say what the original report had been based on. It did not mention the guard by name. It did not apologize directly. Marcus read the statement twice and then posted a single line in reply. She still doesn't know why she was stopped. That line got more responses than anything else he had written. Dorothy filed her formal complaint that Tuesday. Her daughter went with her. They sat across from a different mall manager, someone more senior than Karen Briggs, someone who had been sent specifically to handle the meeting. He was polite. He offered coffee. He used the word unfortunate several times. He said the guard in question had been spoken to. He said they were committed to ongoing training. He did not provide any documentation of what the original report had said or who had made it. Dorothy thanked him for his time and left. She called Marcus afterward and told him how it went. He listened without interrupting. "They're not going to tell me," she said. Not bitterly. Just factually. "No," he agreed. "They're not. But they know now that people are watching," she said. "Yes," Marcus said. "They know that." That was not nothing. It was not everything, but it was not nothing. In the weeks after, a few things happened quietly. The guard was moved from the East Wing to a different section of the mall, a detail Marcus learned from someone who worked at one of the stores and had seen the whole incident. The mall updated their website to include a customer feedback form that had apparently not been easily accessible before. A local community organization that advocated for elderly residents mentioned the incident at a city council meeting, not as an emergency, but as an example of the kind of everyday treatment that older residents, particularly older Black residents, experienced in public spaces. Marcus went back to Greenfield Mall the following Saturday. He took the kids, as always. He bought Caleb another small dinosaur to complete the set. Destiny found earrings she liked. They had lunch in the food court. Near the bench by the clothing store, Marcus paused for a moment. The bench was empty. The mall moved around it, oblivious. People walked past with their bags and their children and their ordinary Saturdays, and none of them knew what had happened there the week before. But something had happened. A man had stopped walking. A woman had not been made to go anywhere she did not want to go. A question had been asked loudly enough that it could not be pretended away, even when the people who should have answered it chose silence instead. Marcus looked at the bench for a moment, then felt Caleb pull his hand. Dad. Toy store. Toy store. Marcus confirmed, and they walked. He was not a hero. He would have been the first to say so. He was a man who had been raised to believe that how you treat people when it costs you something is the only version of character that actually counts. His mother had told him that. He told it to Destiny on the nights she came to him with problems from school, and he planned to tell it to Caleb when Caleb was old enough to sit still long enough to hear it. Some things are simple. A woman did nothing wrong. She was stopped anyway. Someone asked why. That was the whole story. Everything else was just what happened because one person decided not to keep walking.